Maverick News, the antivirus program for your mind. And now, the Freedom Reporters.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rick Walker. Welcome to a special broadcast here on the Maverick News Channel. Tonight, we do have the Durham by-election all candidates forum, and we're about to get started with that. We don't have all of the candidates with us, but we do have some of them, and we're going to engage in I think, a pretty interesting discussion and explore both the local and national issues here tonight, because the entire country has its eyes on the riding of Durham, the riding formerly held by the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, Erin O'Toole. It's up for grabs, and it is it's a political skirmish, a prelude to things to come as we get into what might be an election year federally in Canada, if not very soon thereafter in 2025. So stick with me. I'll be right back, and we'll get right into it on the other side of this.
Okay, hello everyone. Yes, my name is Gail Robertson, and my business right now is Gail Now, but I'm actually a recovering journalist. So I spent over a decade in mainstream media. I've also managed an advertising and promotion department, and now have my own business. And I also have my own show called Curious Minds with Gail Now, where I address various topics that either aren't being addressed sometimes in mainstream, or maybe people that aren't having a voice. So I've, like Rick, come from a background in journalism, and I probably lean towards I'm someone I consider myself fairly nonpartisan. So I try to keep an open mind, and as Ted Lasso would say, be curious, not judgmental. Apparently, I'm seeing the chat. Icon was coming in clear, but you're having some audio trouble. So
I'll have to do this. How about that? That's probably better. All right. The audio system is a little wonky. Okay, so Gail, hello everyone. I was just saying that before we get into our introductions with all of the candidates here tonight, we're into a forum looking at the riding of Durham, which takes in that red dot there on the Southern Ontario map of Mississauga, Scugog, Oshawa. It's in the Greater Toronto Area, formerly held by the leader of the Conservative Party, Erin O'Toole. It's up for grabs. It's an important riding. It's a by-election and a prelude of things to come as we get into what could be an election year this year federally, putting Justin Trudeau and his Liberal government, I guess, on trial with the voters, and we'll see what happens. We don't have all of the candidates here with us tonight. We do. I have to mention, out of fairness, that there is a new Democratic Party candidate, Chris Borgia. We have Pranay Gunti, who I thought was going to show up tonight, said he was coming, but isn't here. He's an independent candidate. Jamil Jivani with the Conservative Party. I don't think he has done any debates and is not really doing any interviews with media that I've seen. So he did message back finally and said that he's not showing up tonight. Kevin McKenzie represents the Green Party, also not here. Robert Rock with the Liberals, spoke with them, looked like he might come, but so far no show. Maybe he'll show up. Adam Smith with the Rhinoceros Party, very elusive. Never got to speak to him, very difficult to find. And the rest are here. So let's start with Grant Abraham on the other corner and have you introduce yourself and what party you represent, Grant. Your microphone is muted, I think.
Yes, it is. Thank you very much. My name is Grant Abraham. I'm the leader of the newly minted United Party of Canada. It's essentially a center-right party that is a new expression on conservatism in Canada, and it's seeking to reconcile the fiscal and the social conservatives back together again in our nation. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to have the chat, and thank you for hosting this, Maverick Media.
And Khalid, over to you. You represent the Centrist Party.
Yeah, hi. My name, as you said, is Khalid Qureshi, and I'm from the Centrist Party of Canada. New party. We formed it only about 3 to 4 years ago. We registered it across Canada, and we have been able to field some candidates in the past couple of elections. This time, I am the one in the front. I'm not the leader of the party, but I am a main component, and I have an intention that I'll go with the party some way as long as I can survive with it. The Centrist Party believes in a balanced approach to all the problems that we have, the financial issues that we have, the social issues that we have, and political matters. On all those, we need to have a balanced party, and we believe in transparency in finances, which is our main target, and a unity across Canada, end-to-end, coast-to-coast.
Okay, and Trish Conlon with the PPC.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, thanks for having this forum. It's great to have a discussion with everyone. I'm with People's Party of Canada. It is the fastest growing party in Canada. I wasn't a politician. I was an entrepreneur before and very successful. I put that all on hold because I saw that none of the parties were representing the needs of the people. There was gross government overreach that I witnessed during COVID, not standing up for individual rights. Since then, it's only gotten worse with the removal of parental rights with Bill C-4 by all the parties. The assault on people's homes and the poverty I've witnessed. So I believe the best platform for Canada is the People's Party. I'm a conservative. I'm a Christian. I think we've seen that it's a fake liberal and a fake conservative running who are spouting slogans, but not speaking about any real issues. People have seen with me, it's not really left or right anymore. It's right and wrong. And when you have a government that's making people poorer, sicker, and more demoralized, and there's no opposition, we have a weak opposition. It's time for new leadership in Ottawa. And people know me. I came to the community almost 20 years ago with my late husband. We bought a dealership, wanted to, employ people with jobs. Since then, I've raised my kids here. I spoke out during COVID, and some people who didn't like that now come up to me on a regular basis and thank me for the courage that I have. Now, I know there's an audio issue with everyone here.
Yes. So what I'm going to ask is if when you're not speaking, if you could just self-mute your microphones, that would be of great help.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, Tish, are you wearing earpiece?
No, I don't think it's me. I just have my one microphone on.
Because I'm hearing you twice. I think it's like pinging around. I don't know what. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Because I've done podcasting myself. That was one of the fun things I did. When my business was basically destroyed through censorship, but I started podcasting. So I have a mic here, but I haven't had that echo. I hear it with Rick as well.
It's better now. I'm thinking if everybody keeps mics off, except when you're speaking, it may help. I will give that a try. And Rick, I just want to say thanks to the people in the chat that are letting us know. I'm keeping an eye on that. So we'll try to, I know audio is always an issue, so we'll keep an eye on it. And okay.
Would you like me to say that again? Could you hear it?
No, I think we got it. We got it.
Okay.
It was just a little echoey, but no, everything came through. It's just a bit of an echo.
Okay.
So now, Trish, you ran in the last election. I'm just going to show people the results from the last election in 2021. Aaron O'Toole came away with 46.5% of the vote. The Liberal candidate at the time, almost 30%. The NDP, 17.5%, and you came away with 5.5%. So that's kind of where things stood in 2021. It has been a conservative stronghold, but things are a whole lot different now. The issues, I think, are a bit different. We have different candidates as well. And Gail, let's get right into the questions because we want to keep this thing moving along. And I'm going to throw it over to you.
Okay. Number one question I think is on a lot of people's minds is what would you do as a newly elected MP to address the issue of inflation in terms of people finding it difficult, for groceries, rent, and mortgage payments? So what would you do to address inflation and maybe give a little bit of a overview on your economic policy in 20 words or less?
Okay, let's start with Khalid on that.
Sure. Why not? Yeah, inflation. I've been suffering from it. I go out to the grocery shop, and by the time I'm done with just enough of what I have, my budget is gone. So we are all suffering. Inflation is a reality. There's no need for blaming any government or whatever for that, for the inflation. But the question that we ask ourselves and we ask our government, whether the government is on the local level, whether it's on the provincial level, or it is on the national level, the federal level. The question is that are we a rich country or are we a poor country? Are we a struggling country or are we a successful country? Which country are we? How do we identify ourselves, define ourselves? Is there something that we can understand? If we are a rich country, then we should behave as a rich country. Then if a rich country has homeless on the streets, have beggars on the street, we see so many beggars that I feel embarrassed and I sweat when I see that in Canada. And then we have these lineups in front of hospitals on the ER. Then we have schools where the classrooms are bursting with children and teachers cannot handle them. We have our unemployment. We have housing. We have people who don't have homes. Neither they can afford renting nor they can afford all. So we are a rich country. We are an affluent country. If that is the case, then why is it that we are suffering all this? Why are we being taxed so heavily than other countries and heavily than other provinces? And why are we then still suffering? If we are a poor country, then why is the government of Canada spending so much money outside the country? Why is the bureaucracy having so much money going into their pockets? Why is money going and flowing into the pockets of these big corporations and banks and financial organizations? One way or the other, we are either rich or we are poor. So let's behave that way. If we are rich, then we should show that we are rich. The money should trickle down to my pocket.
Okay, just follow up though. What for everybody? What would you do to deal with inflation? Because you've addressed the problem.
So the the first very simple method of controlling this is that if we are poor, let's behave poor. Let's not spend money. Let's stop spending extra money in places where it's not required. Send it back to the municipalities. Send the money back to the municipalities where the municipalities can make their own programs and handle. Then start using your natural resources to the way they should be used. Natural gas, we don't want to use them. We want to hold that gas in our tanks. I don't know for what reason and for when. Other countries are asking us for long to export this gas to them. We are not.
Okay,
Let's use our natural
resources. You to wrap up
first.
because we need to stay on time.
Yeah. So in order to to make sure that we have enough income, we have to make sure that our natural resources and our capacity, our intellectual capacity and our physical capacity and our resources are all used properly and prudently, so we can get the money back into our pockets. Then we have these food chains that we have to deal with. We have to contract them on mass basis and say, okay, here, bring us commodities back into our cities, into our streets on a lower rate. And
Okay,
that's
and
how
we
we
need to move
and
over
it's
to.
no rocket science.
All right, thank you. And let's move over to Grant.
Well, inflation is a twofold issue. It's monetary and fiscal policy. It needs to be addressed in both contexts. Fiscal is a tax issue. We need to drop the carbon tax. We need to look at the downline taxes that we're charging for energy, how that affects agriculture. Those are all things that affect our food prices, etc. And then the monetary policy is the cost of our money. Our money is costing more because it's depreciating. It's we're having to raise interest rates so we can service our debt. That's the death cycle. It needs to be broken, and one of the ways to break that is to jumpstart the economy. And the way that we do that is actually to open up our energy sector, cut those taxes, sell the things that the world needs right now, actually have a conversation about what Canada is in relation to carbon, and this discussion about the environmental crisis that's it's on the roster tonight for discussion. Recognize that we only contribute 1.6% of the global population, global carbon output. We're paying for it as a nation. It's making Canadians poor. But nations like India, Pakistan, China, developing countries are not paying any, but they're the major contributors to these issues. So we gotta reset the balance and actually move away from this carbon issue where Canadians are paying the brunt of this, and move to a place where we're actually stabilizing our people and our nation. And this impacts almost every other conversation we're going to have as well, particularly food prices with the cost of developing fertilizer and the movement of food. And it's just a whole distribution channel discussion. So there's the starting points.
Okay, and Trish?
The People's Party of Canada has an excellent platform on fiscal responsibility. We also believe that the carbon tax needs to be immediately removed. It's impacting not only families, but small businesses. We go further and we oppose net zero mandates for farmers. We take our food and energy security seriously. If you look at what's happening in Europe with these protests, it's because not only is net zero like net zero COVID, it's unachievable, but it will negatively and catastrophically affect our food supply. We also believe in ending the wasteful spending. Canada has been wastefully spending our taxpayer dollars, not only at a municipal level, but at a federal level. I could give you umpteen examples. I presented to council 4 times on this and done a number of town halls. We also need to reduce and eliminate foreign aid. If we're not looking after our own veterans and homeless, we shouldn't be sending money to conflicts that are complex and not our business. We had a historical role as peacekeepers, and I think we should gain respect on the national, international stage again by being peacekeepers and reducing foreign aid spending, particularly now that we're in crisis. We can also protect wages. There is a lot of temporary foreign workers coming into Canada that are undercutting Canadian workers for salaries, and that's affecting people's ability to provide food. We can really work on local initiatives, buy local, rebuild our manufacturing sector. That's going to help with inflation. We can build it here ourselves and also support high-level jobs that are well-paying instead of the MIC jobs that are out there. Service economy jobs tend to be lower paying. So those are just some of the many things. I have a deep background in job creation. I have run a recruitment firm for over 25 years. And building meaningful work is going to be a backbone, reducing spending, and also making sure that our spending is appropriate and is targeting families and helping people afford food and the basics to have a good life.
Okay. Back to you, Gail. Any follow-up?
Okay. No, I think everybody addressed it in a way that I mean, we're also missing our the other two candidates that would probably address also the questions, but I thought each person gave some ideas, which was what we're trying to get to. So the next question, also one that is, I think, top of mind for a lot of people in terms of the impact on what is happening on our communities. So what is your position on immigration policy into Canada?
Is it my turn?
Okay, let's start with Trish, and we'll go around the clock that way this time.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, the People's Party of Canada is the only federal party that maintains we need to lower immigration significantly. We've had in 2022 over 600,000 immigrants and non-permanent residents into our country, and it's put enormous stress on housing, healthcare, and jobs. We're in a stagnant economy right now. There's not enough jobs, doctors, nurses, or homes, and we're also allowing record number of refugee claims. And Canada's putting up refugees in luxury hotels while kids, I've talked to many who are living on the street who have a university degree, working 2 jobs, can't afford living. That's not kind. When you're in an airplane and there's turbulence, they've always taught you have to put your own mask on first. So saying we need to reduce immigration is what every immigrant I've spoken to on the street, and I've talked to thousands at their doorsteps, they agree as well. We just don't have enough services. And I think to be responsible as a nation, as we go through a turbulent period, we need to reduce immigration. We also need to better screen potential immigrants for values and also for their skills. For Canadian jobs where they may be missing skills. I've had many wonderful immigrants come to my office for new jobs who had excellent attitudes and skills. And they too now say that people are recklessly being allowed in. We aren't doing proper screening or background checks. So the People's Party position, which I support as a Canada First MP, is we need to clean up our own mess right now. We're in turbulent times. We need to significantly reduce immigration to solve the housing and healthcare crisis so that our elderly and critically ill aren't dying waiting for treatments. So we will reduce immigration, and that is what the constituents of Durham want as well.
Grant, over to you.
Well, this is definitely an interesting conversation because we've never had this problem in Canada in relation to the correlation with housing and immigration. And so the conversation must be set in the context of demand that is coming into the country through immigration and housing. And I tend to see these issues as requiring a solution that fits into a broader economic strategy that actually helps us decide how much immigration we have, starting with a moratorium until we've actually created a supply issue for our housing and we care for these issues. Now, it can be a very short-term thing, but we need to look at this. I don't think the PPC is the only party with an immigration policy like this. And we need to think carefully about what we're talking about when we say things like that. I just think that the economic framework for Canada has been stretched too far. I think the big issue in our country is we're not asking why we're having this increase of immigration to this level and why our government is pushing this far. We've always had a responsible stage growth that allows people to immigrate into our nation and allows our country to absorb them and adapt to our culture, our traditions. And we're not doing that right now. And we're seeing that. I was downtown in Toronto on Sunday, and I was really amazed to see a Hamas demonstration that was pretty assertive and pretty aggressive. And we're having immigration challenges here that we need to talk about. And I'm a little fatigued, actually, in our nation where we're skirting around these hotter issues, where we have to actually look at this agenda that is rolling out in relation to a discussion about having an aggressive position being taken on our streets that is completely opposed to Israel when Canada is very clearly aligned with Israel in terms of its foreign policy. And these are issues that we need to discuss. We need to stop having these sanitized conversations about the just in economics. We need to define discussions about whether militant Islam like Hamas is actually compatible with our nation, and have these conversations. And so while I appreciate that we're just talking about housing or immigration or whatever, there are much broader membrane issues in our country that we need to engage. And the biggest challenge here, I'd like to say, in a lot of these topics is we've got agendas that are being pushed by the Liberal government, and we've got a conservative government that is not asking these questions. And that's one of the reasons why we have a PPC. That's one of the reasons why we have a United Party of Canada asking these issues. And it interests me immensely that we have a candidate in the Durham riding called Jamil Javani, whose main platform is to step up, to be a fighter and lead with compassion, and he's not here. And when we look at the Durham riding, the reality is that Aaron O'Toole betrayed the constituents in Durham with his True Blue platform and then shifting completely left. And now we have another candidate who's saying he's going to fight for us, but he can't even approach and have these conversations, because the reality is that those candidates that everyone is looking to vote for because they just want to get rid of Justin Trudeau, we're not actually having those conversations because they're not showing up. And the truth is, the candidates are going into the party, and the grassroots agenda of the actual constituents are being silenced. And this is a pattern all across the country. I sat on the EDA of the Conservative board out in BC, and I know exactly what is going on here. And so this is why we must have these conversations, and we must have them holistically as a nation, and stop tiptoeing around these broader issues, and look very clearly at our immigration and determine what it is that we want to bring into this country. We're a nation of immigrants. I celebrate immigration. I'm never going to allow anyone to say that I'm not in support of immigration. My father's an immigrant to this country, but there are much bigger issues going on here. It's time to have those conversations and not be timid about them.
Okay. And Khalid, make sure you unmute your mic. I muted your microphone for noise suppression. So make sure you unmute it. And
Yeah, hi. Immigration. The take that the Centrist Party of Canada has is that immigration is a must, is a necessity for Canada. We have a very wide, very big landmass, one of the biggest countries in the world. We have natural resources. We have our borders open to oceans, and we have so much more. We need people. So saying that immigrants coming in, on one hand, are a burden on the economy is absolutely wrong. It is important that we must get. The only problem is that the management of these immigrants is the responsibility of the government. If they bring in immigrants, 600,000 in 1 year, and we do not have the infrastructure for that number, then we are making a mistake somewhere. So it is not the influx of the immigrant that is the issue. It is the management of those immigrants that's the issue. And if we say that as far as I understand, when we are getting these immigrants every year, we issue a list of the required categories of these immigrants, categories in terms of experience and in terms of their profession. So if that is the case, then somebody somewhere is making that list of categories. And that list goes out, and then across the globe, we get these people according to the slots that we have offered them. Why is it that these people, when they come in here, they don't find the jobs that they have been allotted for? So there's some massive mismanagement on one hand. So it is not the influx of immigrants. We cannot stop that, or we may be able to control that and organize that, but we have to manage it and manage it properly across the shores of Canada. But the more important thing that Grant has said is, and I'm completely in opposition to that, the coming in of the type of people or pointing out to the type of religion they have, or the type of faith they have, or the type of creed they have, or the type of caste they have is completely not acceptable. We cannot simply allow people to come in based on a certain belief or a certain religion or a certain type or a certain region. We are a country who has been a neutral country, has been a sympathetic country, has been a kind country. We have people with big hearts. Canadians are known for that, and we cannot have a policy which goes out into the world saying that we are discriminating one over the other. If we have seen rallies on our streets in the past few days, and if we are allies with Israel, well and good, we are. But being allies with Israel, if I am an ally with you, it doesn't mean that I will not stop you when doing something wrong. It is my duty as a Canadian, it is my duty as a country, as a Canadian who is known for a certain character in the world, to behave according to that character. And Canada will behave according to that.
Okay, and because
let me complete that.
Sure.
So it is important that we understand that having seen violence or aggression on the streets by a certain group does not mean that we make decisions according to those. We are a free country. We have allowed those people to come in, and they will say what they have to say. And we must listen to them, and we must according. Our Prime Minister goes out and says that we are standing with Israel unconditionally, and that all political parties must be friends with Israel. This is what the Prime Minister said. The Centrist Party of Canada does not agree with that. There's nothing in the world which is unconditional. We have a contract, we have an agreement, and there are conditions. There's nothing unconditional.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, because you did address Grant directly, is I'm going to give him an opportunity to respond to that, and in fairness, we'll also allow Trish to respond if she wants to after Grant.
Well, two issues I think there is. One is Khalid's trying to say that our housing issue is not because of demand, it's because of our ability to absorb the people that are coming in. That it's a ridiculous assertion, because obviously where is the fine line with what a nation can absorb? We've had very clear models of immigration that we've been able to absorb and enculturate, and we're struggling with that now. And I think the other thing is that I don't want you to go away, Khalid, and make this a Muslim issue, because I have all kinds of Muslim friends in this country, and they've lived here for a long time. So it's not an issue with Islam. I'm talking about militant Islam that's seeking to wipe off one of our allies from the ocean. Just put your hand down for a second and you can come back to me. This is a real issue. And you say that we're a peaceful country. We're actually a country that is based on very clear values. We fought in 2 world wars to oppose tyranny and repression. We've sent our soldiers over to deal with issues in the Middle East. And our veterans have a view on that. And they've been dealing with the problems that have been coming out of the Middle East. And my question for you is, if you're so egalitarian about everything, why aren't the Islamic countries engaging a response to the Palestinians? So don't make this a Muslim, Christian, Canadian issue. I have a real challenge with that. We need to be discerning and to be careful about what is coming into our nation in terms of the levels of aggression that we're seeing, especially when our own citizens who are standing up for freedom, they're standing up for a better economy, are being arrested for protesting in the same way. There's a softball response being played by the Liberal government because people are afraid to engage this discussion.
Okay, go ahead, Trish, and then we'll come back to Khalid.
I just wanted to clarify on this point that more is not always better. We do have a large landmass, but a lot of it right now is uninhabitable. And under the Conservative government, they were really pushing this high density housing over our green spaces. I think we need quality over quantity. We should be focusing on growing slowly with good quality individuals wherever they come from. Canada's built on Christian values. That's a fact. We've had more Christian pastors put in jail just for having church while mosques were open in Canada during COVID. We've had Christian churches burnt down. So there is a bit of, a bit of violence going on that should not be occurring towards different communities in our Canadian country. So it's important that when we're focusing on immigration, it's based on skills and a willingness to have the values of a Christian nation, which are similar to Islam and similar, the Judeo-Christian values of loving your neighbor. And that means avoiding militant, types of individuals who have, aggressive agendas that could harm our nation or other nations. Canada is a land of peace. So we need to protect our green spaces. We do need to reduce immigration, absolutely. And this is not against any person coming in. I know we've had record level of refugees, and I personally can see by the outcomes that that's been reckless and harmful. There is an agenda through Agenda 2030 to increase migration to Western countries. All Western countries have seen a rapid increase in the number of people flooding across their borders unchecked, and it is increasing crime and violence. That's just a fact. So putting a stop to the floodgates, proper checking for skills, checking for values, whether or not you're Christian or you have Islamic faith or you're Jewish faith, doesn't matter, or no faith. If you have that in your heart that you will love your neighbor, you'll contribute to the economy, and you want to contribute to this country, because many people are coming in and looking for the welfare state, and that is rating our standard of living as well. So that's just what I wanted to say on that.
Sure. And Khalid, I know that you wanted to respond to Grant and maybe to Trish too. So go ahead.
Yeah, and in general, like we all have our own points of view. I have been in Canada for 50 years or more, and I know exactly what the fabric of Canada is: the social, the political, and the faith fabric. So we are very open to these concepts. The conflict that we see on the streets in Canada, that we have seen in the recent 2-3 months, very aggressive show of displeasure by the people, and with these processions on the streets and whatever, is not a conflict between religions. It's got nothing to do with Islam and Judaism. I have scores of Jewish friends, and some of my family are Jewish. And I think I have more friends who are Jewish than are Muslims. That's got nothing to do with it. The conflict is a geographical conflict between a certain part in the Middle East against another certain part in the Middle East. It's got nothing to do with Jews or Muslims or Christians or any one of those. The Palestinians are maybe half Muslims. It is a conflict between two forces. Canada, in our understanding, as the Centrist Party of Canada, who has a balanced approach, is known for being mediators. If there's one of our friends going and hitting anybody in the universe, and we think that the use of force is not balanced, it is our job to say it in the United Nations and to say it in the international court and to say it otherwise, that we want peace. And that's all there is.
Okay, I'm gonna let the conversation continue.
No, I think we have said enough about this.
Okay,
and I think this has got nothing to do with religion. And let's withdraw from there.
Okay.
We are not talking. We are Canadians, and we are all open in terms of religions, and we understand. All of us understand exactly what Canada is.
Right,
and if we do not, then we better go and learn.
All right,
but we are very clear and open in terms of religion.
You're right. You're right,
religious
Khalid,
conflict.
But we're not going to allow people to march around our streets advocating the destruction of our allies.
I understand.
That's not open.
That is not open, and we should have a policy and a process in which, without saying that this conflict is a religious conflict, it's got nothing to do with it. Far from that. It is very far from that religion. It is a geographical conflict. It's somewhere in the universe which Canada is taking sides.
You know what? You're completely airbrushing the issue if you say
no. I'm not.
Yeah. And I'd
I'm
like
saying it
I'd
clearly.
really like to ask Tish a question about her comments about Agenda 2030. I brought it up in the Rogers interview. It was very interesting to see the Liberal candidate's response, because he rushed up to the mic and said, oh, there's no way there's any Agenda
Yes.
2030. I've never heard of it. I've never read it. It
Yes.
doesn't exist. And I'm just wondering, in what universe that when you've never heard of anything and it doesn't exist, why you would rush up and defend the fact that
Yes.
it doesn't exist. It was quite hilarious. But my question for you was, I appreciate the comment on Agenda 2030 and bringing that forward, because that is, in my view as well, one of the corrosive agendas in our country that's undermining the pillars and the values of our nation. And when we talk about Agenda 2030 in relation to immigration, I'd like to ask you what your view is on how immigration fits into Agenda 2030, because you've linked them. And
Yes.
I hope you feel safe to answer, because I think I'm an ally on this, but I think it's a deeper conversation that Canadians need to have, because there clearly is an
Yes.
agenda to deconstruct the values of our nation.
Yes, thank you for asking. And I feel, we've gotten off track with some of the talk about the religious, and I want to make it sure that, our Constitution, everyone is equal under the law, no matter your race, religion, or any other factors in Canada. That's a very important thing in our country, and I will uphold that. I've lived in Europe, and I had friends who fled to Iran, and I've learned many different languages, but there's a reason why some people are coming to Canada. This violence that's been inflicted on them is unjust, and that's a deeper conversation why it all happened. So my heart goes out to them. But what is happening is under Agenda 2030, which is a real agenda being implemented at a local level through ICLEI under the guise of a climate emergency, allows for loopholes where Western countries can be flooded with migrants, whether war or climate, and they're not being screened properly. A lot of them are fighting age males. There are some real concerns, and there's some parallels to the increase in violence we see in the United States, Europe, and in Canada. Canada is, as I said, built on Christian values, and we wouldn't want anything like Sharia law, extreme militant Islam to come into our country. Most Muslims I've met are wonderful, peaceful people, but this is a real agenda, and there is a loophole. People's Party will exit from that part of the United Nations, the allowing migrants to come into the country. And I think it's just prudent to check, screen that people share similar values no matter their background when they're coming into the country. But we see the results. It's like in the Bible, Matthew says, you will know them by their fruits. These agendas that are being implemented are causing deliberate harm. They're making our citizens and our constituents here poorer, sicker, and more demoralized. And I've talked to over 30,000 people. I was called into this role. I felt very deeply called. I have a deep faith in God. And I've listened to heartbreaking stories that whatever the agenda is it's massively harming people, and it is deliberate. And we see this across Western nations, and it must stop. And I think by removing the barriers federally with a new party, unfortunately, it was the Conservatives who signed us on to Agenda 2030 with both Mulroney, Agenda 21, and then Agenda 30 was Harper. They sold out our country. They signed us up for this climate agenda at a municipal level. Before that, climate was weaponized at a federal level. We all know the story of the Ice Age. This is going to happen.
And we'll wrap it up there, and I'm going to throw it back to Gail. And Gail, I'm going to let you take the next question.
Can I just ask one question there before, excuse me? To what end, Tish, is Agenda 2030? Why are we having immigration? What is the agenda of having an overrun of immigration into the country? That's the deeper question. To what end? Is there a destabilize? Are you asserting a destabilizing force in terms of military age men in your comments? Okay.
Well, based on what we've seen already with the data, and you can only look at the data, and then what is actually reported through the government. Absolutely, it's intentional destabilization of our nations, and that's why we need people to oppose it at all levels, federal, provincial, and local. And that's why I pursued the federal role, because I think I'll be able to remove some of the barriers, help us exit from the UN, exit from the Paris Climate Accord, hold Health Canada accountable for some of the things they've done to contribute to making our population sicker. You know, I had a big event, it was packed, and I did invite Dr. Paul Alexandra, Dr. Chris Shoemaker, whose voices have been silent. So I think that we can course correct when people step into courage. We uphold our law, and we have a debate with different professionals for both climate and with COVID. The COVID experience implemented things that caused great harm to our people, and I think we need to investigate that further as well.
Okay, and I'll let Khalid respond, of course. Is that okay with you, Gail?
Yeah,
And I think we're going to wrap up this topic, but Khalid, if you can just wrap it up.
I'm just
Yeah.
going to wind it up. It is disappointing, and I am actually very disappointed in the type of conversation that's gone on in the past few minutes. This is not a religious platform. The mention of the Sharia law, and the mention of the Jewish people, and the mention of the Muslims, and the influx of all this is not something that should have been on this platform. I have to say this, and I want this to be put on record. I will not say anything. We are Canadians. We believe in neutrality of thought. We believe in sympathy and faith to each other, to all faiths to be open, and we do not believe. I agree that violence is not a solution to anything. I agree that violence should not be imported into the country. I agree that if we start importing roots of violence into this country, we'll have problems in the future. That is agreed. But for People's Party and for United Party to take this platform to put on their agenda and to propagate that discussion between themselves is not acceptable. So
I don't have an agenda.
Okay, well,
Agenda
I'll not-
2030
Okay,
is
all right.
Please let me
government
speak.
site.
Please
It's
let me speak,
not
Chris.
mine.
Okay.
So
It's
I will not say anything in
Okay.
response to any of those. I
Yeah.
can. I have a lot of knowledge, and you know,
I just want to
but
say,
I will not say that. I will keep the peace on, and I will just withdraw from that discussion. But I did not like it. The taste is not good in my mouth. Thank you.
I just want to interject because I think the points you made are very valid. And I think after listening to everyone, what I want to do is wrap up a little bit, because what I heard were some common points. And I think the other point I wanted to make is someone who spent a lot of time listening on these topics. And I knew this topic might be a hot button one. At the same time, this is something that people are talking about on the streets. And we have a somewhat, I think, good place here to have some of these discussions, Khalid. So I hear what you're saying, that, you know, what I've witnessed as of many years as a journalist, one thing I've always said is that, you know, there are good journalists, bad journalists. There are good people in certain religions, and there are bad people. And they're in every, whatever group you want to name someone, not everybody is good in that religion. Not everybody is bad, right? So what I want to go back to,
we can have a discussion on religion someday, and all of us can be there, and that'll be a hot one. But I'll be ready to come in. But in this discussion on this platform, that is not the way I'm going to take. We are talking Canada, and I love Canada, so that's
I think
That's we all do.
Are you serious? We all love Canada. That's why
Yeah.
we're running.
I know we do.
So this,
I know we do.
This
We went off.
Khalid,
Yeah.
this
We went
airbrushing
off a
blows
little
me away.
beyond our borders, but that's fine. That's fine. It happens.
Hamas and Hezbollah exist, and that's why they're protesting outside.
I don't even want to mention those people. You know, who are they?
Yeah, I know. Of
I
course
don't
you
know.
don't.
I'm a Canadian. I don't know them.
Me too.
Yeah, we
That's
don't know
what's
them.
happening.
We don't know them. They're geographical
Okay.
issues.
All right,
And these
Gail,
geographical issues
back-
have to be
back to
geographical.
Gail.
Now they've
And-
come to
Next
Canada.
question.
And we'll move
I have
on.
to mute some mics, Rick, just so I can continue on. Because what I want
Yes.
to get to is the common points. Because the question is, what was the policy in immigration? Each of you did address it, and I think it's good to come back to what is the commonality. And what some of the things I heard were really around the process, right? And we have two of the main parties, the parties that aren't here tonight to really address some of this as well. And I think that's a good point you brought up, Grant, that, if we're going to have these discussions, even though they're difficult ones, we've had just some conversations right now, and this is one of the problems, is that as soon as you bring up immigration, it gets into difficult conversations. At the same time, though, I will say this: we need to have those difficult conversations, and they're not happening, which is causing more problems. So I want to give credit to someone like Rick he's had some very difficult times, because he's like me. He believes in free speech with some boundaries, though. There has to be some boundaries. As much as I'm a free speech person, I think you have to have some boundaries, that we don't go into areas that can really, increase or encourage hate or violence towards anyone, right? But what I want to go back to is some of the points, because I think this needs to come up when we're talking about an pending election, is things like, process. And I think, Grant, you had brought up about connecting housing to immigration policy. Tish, you mentioned looking at, the management. So, and I think, Khalid, you did, I don't know, I'm pronouncing your name wrong. I'm sorry. I practiced it beforehand too. But coming up with ways to deal, instead of saying no, we spend a lot of time, I think too much time sometimes, talking about the problem and not enough about the solution. So I'm going to soon turn it back over to Rick because I think that's what we need to get to when we're talking about elections. I always come from that idea of curiosity. We need to talk about these things, but we need to look at solutions and not at what the problem is, because that seems to be firing everybody up, but it's not getting us to where we need to get to.
So what's our next question?
Yes, I have a hard stop at one point. I am a mother, and it's been a long campaign. So let's keep going.
I have more about something about manufacturing. But Rick, do you want to ask one of your questions?
No, you keep going. You've got the list, and those are the main ones.
Okay, let's go to something. I work in manufacturing. One of the questions I want to ask about is the ban on plastic straws, plastic bags, the idea of banning plastic. So this is, while it's a very narrow topic, it also impacts the broader manufacturing sector. So I would like each of your thoughts on what is your thoughts on the banning of the initial, it's plastics, and then bags, but any thoughts on that? And if this isn't an area of expertise, we can pass it on to someone else who has.
Let's start with Grant, and this is an environmental question, I guess, as much as anything else, not just business. But go ahead, Grant.
Well, I just think that we need to have a serious discussion about a continuity of a plan, because I went through a drive-through the other day and I got a paper straw that used to have a drink that was a paper cup, and now I'm getting paper straws with fully plastic cups. So we might have saved a little bit of plastic being produced in a straw, but now they're using cups. So it just doesn't seem to make sense. I think it's very much an issue that we want to engage and take care of, but it's, there's such bigger discussions about the environment that we need to have beyond straws and cups. And I'm not saying it's not important, but this discussion about our environment, I think, as Tisha said, about getting out of the Paris Climate Accord, I agree with that. We need to have these bigger environmental discussions and actually assess, again, a part of a broader economic strategic plan. What is our response to climate? I'm not invalidating the effects of climate change. I still and continue to question the actual contribution of humanity to climate change, and I'm quite suspicious about the agenda. I think it's woven in to Agenda 2030 as well, in terms of why Canadians are getting poorer and why we're having this ridiculous agenda. The reality is, in Alberta, when we had our super cold weather, the first thing that the government said to the Albertans was, don't plug in your car. So, this issue of support and the grid and the well-being of Canadians has to be assessed in relation to the broader discussion about the environment and our ability to steward it properly. So I just think we need a deeper look. We're dealing with cliches on a lot of these issues without actually interrogating this carbon agenda as the environmental threat.
Okay, Trish, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I'm going to answer this sort of in terms of the questions that were sent, the one on climate as well, local and you know, the climate agenda. I mean, I have to say I'm a registered holistic nutritionist. I've written 2 books, a deep knowledge into, you know, how we can clean up our air, soil, and water. And I do believe pollution is an issue. Yeah, and I'm a big, thank you so much. You know, I see how the toxicity in our food and additives that's going unregulated. When it comes to things like plastic, yeah, we could do a lot better with recycling. A lot of the plastics aren't recyclable right now. There's a lot of ways that we could support, you know, better quality. For example, bringing back manufacturing to Canada, then you could have better quality produce instead of everything breaking down every year or two. So there's ways that we can use less and have things last longer. When it comes to the climate agenda, I do take a strong stand. You know, carbon is less than 0.04% of atmospheric gases. I think Dr. Patrick Moore, who's a great Canadian, co-founded Greenpeace, he takes a strong stand. His CO2coalition.org website is excellent. You know, climate does always change, and it can get hotter, can get cooler. A little warming is good for our number of people in our planet, because we can produce more food, and human activity is negligible at best. So we shouldn't be taxing the air we breathe to change the weather. I take a strong stand. Also, why is carbon now the enemy? There's so many different real pollutants like glyphosate and atrazine. We should be worried about our bee population, about cleaner food. We should investigate GMO foods and if they are healthy for us, and better ways to clean up our air, soil, and water, you know, improve our topsoil. Those sort of things will help us, I think. And I think if people have a mindset to be good stewards of our environment, you know, and again, I really take a strong stand to protect our green spaces. That means we don't need to recklessly grow our population, or we could go slower, and we should always protect our green spaces. So I'm a really big steward of the environment, and I think everyone should be.
Khalid?
Yeah, there we go. We got an expert lecture on environment. Thank you, Trish. Yeah, I agree with the fact that we need to control. We need to control our habits and our methods and our processes that we use in our social, you know, everyday life, and that has a major effect. But the question is there? I have a very sensitive feeling. I have a feeling that behind this whole scene, when you see, like Grant said, in the market, a cup which is plastic and a straw, which is more important to be plastic, of paper, which actually collapses halfway through the cup. Why is it? Like there's something wrong somewhere in the back. There's something which is happening which is not correct. Our economy and our financial system and the contracts that we give out are not balanced. We are not being honest to ourselves. So my own take on this is that we have to stop spending money on things that are not Canadian. We cannot go out of the Canadian borders and dish out money and then come back and say, oh, sorry, we don't have enough budget for you to pull you out of the streets, or we don't have enough budget to care for our environment, and we cannot, you know, that will not work. We have to bring the money back down into the municipalities, into the cities, for them to be able to decide how they will organize and process their needs, and how this whole conglomerate of cities and municipalities across Canada will come up to a conclusion. So rather than coming from up to down, from top to bottom, we need to go from the roots up to the top to make a collective effect. And that needs a very genuine and very aggressive policy on the federal level.
Okay.
And that's what Centrist is going to work.
I do want to move on, and it's sort of related to what we were talking about before, I think, in a way, loosely, to immigration, maybe not so loosely, the funding of the wars in Ukraine and Gaza. I can't remember who we're supposed to start with first, but I'll throw that to you, Khalid.
Yeah. Ukraine. Russia and Ukraine have a conflict. We are interested in Ukraine because all the phosphate comes from there, all the fertilizers are being affected because of the Ukraine war. So there's an issue. Then there's the favorite Hamas Israel conflict, a purely geographical conflict. And we are taking sides with one or the other. The question is, we have to mend our own house first. Why are we going out beyond? And see, the important thing is that these are the two conflicts that we are siding with. But then there's so many others. There's so many other genuine conflicts that are there that we are not paying any heed to. And as a standard policy, in one conflict we are favoring one party. In the other conflict, we are favoring an exactly opposite party with no principles in place. We have to have a foreign policy which is stable, which is balanced, and which is fair. And that, of course, the interests of Canada stands first. We have to look into our present and the future and to build our international policy accordingly. But still, our policies at the moment internationally are not fair or not balanced. We need to amend that, and Centrist Party of Canada will do that.
Okay, Grant.
I think Mr. Putin's been very clear for a long, long time about the encroachment. Whenever the Berlin Wall came down, Russia entered into an arrangement with the NATO countries that there would always be a buffer zone. That position was held for a long time. There's been constant encroachment by NATO and the EU into Eastern Europe. I think that he has been incremental in his diplomatic policy with regard to that issue. I do find it interesting that one of the first things that Russia did when this conflict escalated was destroy 13, or was it 11? I'm not sure, bioweapons labs that had been set up. My instinct is that this is more of a proxy war than we actually think. And I think that to identify what's going on in Palestine and with Israel as a geographical war is another airbrushing by Mr. Qureshi here, because Hamas and Hezbollah are funded by Iran. And the entire agenda of the Iranian regime at the moment is to see Israel and the Jews removed from the earth. And I just cannot accept that kind of airbrushing. And to distill it down to a geographical war is disgusting. And I am a Canadian. There's the truth. So I think we need to probably just agree to disagree on that. But that representation is ridiculous.
Okay, Trish.
My perspective when elected will be to protect all human life and promote peace. I have taken a deep dive learning into the conflict with Russia, Ukraine. I do see that there was a breaking down of the Minsk agreement. Russia tried many times to negotiate peace, even at the last minute, NATO forces encroaching, and then again, almost negotiate peace. We don't have all the facts in that conflict like a lot of others. There's been skirmishes all over Azerbaijan. It's just not reported in the news. If Canada was always having to take a side, it's sometimes very gray where's right and wrong. So I will protect all life. I think it's a tragedy in the Middle East. I think the loss of the lives of the children in Palestine, and that is unconscionable human loss. And I do hope very much and will advocate for peace in the Middle East, for settlement. I know the Abraham Accords came close, and I think all life should be protected. So I think there's a lot of wrongdoing in the Middle East, and I don't think it's quite so clear. And my heart goes out to those who've been affected, both Jewish deaths through to brutality and the Palestinian lives lost. So I will take a path of peace when elected. Protect all life.
Okay, Khalid, you can respond.
I'm sorry, I wanted to stay quiet, but Grant's comment was needs response. I completely disagree. The conflict in the Middle East is not a religious conflict. You're connecting it to Iran, but you're not connecting it to Saudi Arabia or Iraq or Israel or to to Syria and others, or to maybe to Indonesia and Pakistan and all those countries who are Muslim countries. You're not looking at that point if you're just looking at Iran, which is not a very active partner. So we are listening to all this news from the U.S., and we're listening to one side, and we're making decisions on the a partisan decision. I do not agree. This is not a religious conflict. But Grant, you can keep your opinion, and if your party has the same opinion, then I'm not very. I'm discouraged with that.
Yeah.
But generally, as a Canadian, we know that you're a Canadian and you're a very true Canadian. So am I, and so is everybody else. And we will stay on. But our stance has to be neutral. Our stance has to be something which is more just than what we are doing. There's two parties fighting. On one side, there's about 2,000 people killed, and the other in 2 months, 40,000 people killed, out of which 10,000 are children. So anyway, I'll stop here, and I'm going to stay. I'll keep my own view. You can keep yours, and thank you.
Okay.
All right. I'm gonna throw it back to Gail so we can move on to the next question, because I don't want to get into regurgitating or rehashing information that we've already kind of visited. So can we move on to something new here, Gail?
Yeah, this one is this is an issue that came up. I'm in the Windsor area, so wondering what your thoughts are or your positions are on the role of an MP with the role of the municipality and how you might work with them or not, I guess. So the one question would be, do you believe, this is on the housing file, do you believe municipalities should allow as of right in order to collect on federal funding for housing? Everybody aware of that? I don't know. I want to ask because I mean, the as of right would allow for people to build up to 4 units without having to go through any approval process.
Are you guys all familiar with that? Is that a fair? Is it,
I don't want
fair
to
to even ask that?
I got different questions sent to me. Just or these are just ad hoc extra questions now, or
I think because of some things that happened in the news, some of this stuff was added in.
If that's specific, that may be too specific, Rick, and I don't.
Yeah, I think maybe it's maybe a little unfair to throw that at them tonight, Gail. So can we just move on to something else from the list?
Maybe this is something that's very big in the news right now, is the online Bill C, whatever, 63, the online.
Yes.
That's so.
Oops.
This is happening right now. It's about the issue around censorship, around, what will be allowed in terms of speech. So it is a live issue right now. And if you are elected, I'm sure that, since the election is coming up, that you'll be at the table and I'm sure discussing this. So whoever wants to comment on this and what your position would be in terms of discussing this act.
Go ahead, Trish, you can start.
Okay, great. Well, this is a good segue into the whole topic of individual and collective rights, because when you have all these bills, I mean these censorship bills, I will oppose all of them. It's caused catastrophic damage to not have open and respectful debate in Canada. So Bill C11 and now Bill C63. I'll also stand against the digital ID and digital central bank digital currency that could be tied to a social credit score, which would, give ultimate control into, our, corrupt government, and, push us to adhere to a certain narratives and be punitive if we're not, just like occurred during COVID with vaccine passports and truckers having their bank closed. But that specific bill, I will absolutely vote no on and oppose it. Absolutely. And I think what we need in Canada, part of the polarization, I do, fault the media. Our mainstream media has been fueling polarization, fear mongering to Canada. And I think they need to start doing their job of reporting truth, reporting sincerely, and also reporting hope There needs to be more hope given these opportunities for unification. So these sort of bills, I will absolutely oppose. All sorts of censorship. I mean, the foundation of all democracy is built on free speech. When you take away free speech and free dialogue, now just like Khalid, we have a conversation. We all don't agree. We have different perspectives, but we can have a respectful debate, and that's important for a functioning democracy. So I will absolutely oppose that and other government overreaches.
Okay, so this is the third major piece of legislation to come forward from the Liberal government on addressing risks and problems, online censorship, child pornography. That's what C63, according to the Liberals, is supposed to be about. But you think that this is about something other than just addressing child pornography?
I mean, I'll just add, then I'll let others, is that I'd have to look at the full the full bill. And again, a lot of times, and the Conservatives started to make these bills really long. I interviewed Randy Hillier on my podcast, Tish Talk, last year, and he said MPs and MPPs don't even read the bills. The party just tells them how to vote. That's how bad it's gotten in Canada. So we need shorter bills that address one topic. And a number of people said it would allow for digital ideas to use internet. I mean, it might sound good, but until you read the bill through and get a good sense of what underhanded things are they trying to push through. Like Bill C4, for example, remove parental rights and has caused chaos in the schools. Now, a lot of the
and we can come back to that because I do want to talk about traditional family values and so on, but I'll throw it over to Khalid to respond to Bill C63, the online harms bill, which is brand new, just days ago.
Yeah, it's strange that we have a bill like that in here, putting any condition, any restriction on speech, on free speech. Free speech or free opinion is the base, is the groundwork of our system that we have. But more importantly, every country and every environment has their own level of intelligence. For example, in Durham, we are one of the 7 most intelligent communities in the world. It's very strange that in Canada, where our intelligence level is very high compared to other areas, not the best in the world, but still acceptable.
Can I get you, at the risk of interjecting, can I get you to explain what you mean by that? That the 7th most intelligent?
Yeah, I heard yesterday I was researching on the internet, and says that Durham is one of the most 7 intelligent communities in the world. Not the regions, communities. So which shows that there's people around, and I don't know who's doing this analysis. I would maybe challenge you to go into it. But if I find the full sources, I'll send it to you.
Okay.
But anyway, we can extract that. But I'm very proud to say that. That's why I'm saying it in Durham. But in Canada, having an intelligence or an IQ level which is higher than many areas, why would you put a restriction or a control on speech? We have had a free speech, and we have had free speech very successfully in here. And when we say child pornography, yeah, okay. But then, are we going to stop open discussion on it? So, my opinion is that there's no way that we can accept anything which is intercepting free speech in Canada.
Grant, what's your view?
I just want to interject about the intelligence. I think Qureshi could be talking about it's sort of a digital transformation that Durham was ranked really high. So digital intelligence, not human intelligence.
I don't know. I think we're getting off into the weeds here. Grant, can you maybe bring it back onto the main drag and talk about this new bill?
Well, this new bill is a part of a series of, again, chipping away at our civil liberties in this country. We have to put this agenda in the context of what the Liberal government has told us already. They've told us that Canada will be the first Post Nation state, which means that our sovereignty is being migrated to somewhere else by someone else. And I think when Justin Trudeau said that back in 2015 or 16 or whenever it was, no one really knew what that meant. That is a change in the social contract with Canadians and our government. People need to understand that. a lot of the things that have happened and that we've seen in terms of the overreach of government, big government, the passing of Bill C-4 in terms of parental authority, the primacy of parental authority, religious freedom, are rooted in this change to the foundational values of this country. We're seeing it as a discussion in relation to what Justin Trudeau meant when he said that there's going to be a reset. That's an issue. There's another issue with regard to foreign interference in this country. We actually had a Liberal MP come out in 2020 after a report was issued by the Security Committee within the government, and he went on YouTube to tell Canadians about how extensive the breaches were in our foreign interference. We have a government right now in the Liberal government that is compromising the integrity of this nation. I'm going to say that what I'm seeing from a legal perspective is actually treasonous, unless it's brought to a platform in an election so that people understand what a post-nation state means, or what a reset means. It's completely unacceptable that these changes are happening to the fabric of our country. There was not a referendum on it. They're a minority government making these changes. These are the deep issues that actually weave together the things that Tish is talking about here, why we're struggling around the heightened supply of immigration, why we're talking about censorship of the Canadian people, why we're struggling with economic issues because we're sending all our money overseas. There's a clear destabilization of our country. This is just another dot in the picture that we need to connect in terms of what is really going on in this nation. And this is the thing, forget all the other conversation that we've had tonight. I think the most important thing in this conversation is that we're looking at a group of people in Canada who are simply saying we're not happy with the Liberal government, and let's bring some more apples home and let's put more money in our pockets. The truth is, the Conservative government, the Conservative Party, whether it's Erin O'Toole or Andrew Scheer or Pierre Poilievre, in 3 elections, in 3 leadership elections, have never engaged these issues once. They're the most low-hanging fruit with the highest bounty of political benefit, and they haven't engaged it. They haven't talked about it. Why? Why not? And my premise is that they are taking this country over a cliff edge to the loss of our sovereignty, the migration of our people and our freedom into a framework that is globalist. And no one is having this conversation. Unless we actually engage and have this conversation, we're actually going to risk losing our country. And people need to wake up to this conversation.
And that's where I wanted to take it next anyway. We are seeing deep divisions within the country, culture wars, disagreements over everything from climate change to family values. We're seeing the rise of separatist movements, both in Western Canada and I think in Quebec as well. So what would you guys do to try to bring the country back together and save the country? Or do you think it should be saved? Are you even considering the possibility of breaking the country up? Because I know that there are some parties that do advocate for that. So Trish, I'll start with you.
Wow, these are totally different questions, but I'm happy to answer them. I mean, it brings me back to when I was participating in the Freedom Convoy. I was there many weekends. I had lost my business. I was deleted off LinkedIn, which was my 25,000 followers. I effectively lost my business during COVID, so I went and joined the Freedom Movement, and there I had the most incredible conversations with people who had been separatists in Quebec said, you know what? I love you guys. It's not you, it's the government. Separatists in Western Canada who said, you know what? Hey, we're all pretty great. Aren't we? Don't we have a great country? It was the most wonderful, loving experience. And I am a strong advocate for the unity of our country, and I always will be when elected. And I think we have the divisiveness in our media is what we need to stop, and within our government as well. Calling part of what creates divisiveness as well is the policies of division, which include DEI. Diversity, equity, inclusion is anything but fair. It's reverse racism and discrimination. And we have to just start looking at people for the quality of their character and their merit when it comes to things. A lot of these pandering to special interest groups has caused fuel division. And we have to start creating policies that unify everybody. So, you know, there's deep divisions within media, but I'm a strong believer in the country, and I believe this country is great. I want to help rebuild this country. I want to help rebuild through regaining our manufacturing sector, which will provide jobs. People are united when there's jobs, reopening our energy sector, maybe equalizing some of the transfer payments over time. You know, I love our western part of Canada. It's a strong conservative part of Canada. I love the French aspect. I speak French, and my first job was in Quebec. I think that the beautiful landscape, and I think that this country has a lot more to gain by standing united than anything else. And I think a lot of these separatist movements are fueled by economic frustration, by, you know, not having a job, not being listened to, not having a voice. And I think if we can give people a voice and allow for open discussion on all forums, and look for ways to unite the country through policies and through economic prosperity, I think we'll have a great future ahead of us.
Okay, and the reason you're getting some different questions is because we're into the second half of the program, and I'm looking in the chats across all the platforms and
Thank you.
kind of responding to what people are saying. And Khalid, I'll let you respond to the question as well.
I just want to add this as a journalist who's done debates, like, you don't always get the questions in advance, and in politics, you got to be ready to answer.
That's fine. No, that's fine. I'm happy to answer that one. I'm a huge promoter of Canada, so yeah, that's fine.
And we're here to facilitate discussion, not just have people sit there and read from a sheet of paper too. So, Khalid, take it away. It's all yours.
Yeah, the Centrist Party of Canada has one of the basic three principles is unity across Canada, and that unity is our prime motive. West to east, north to south, we have to be one Canada, and there's no other way. There's no option. So the reason, and we have been seeing some problems, some tearing in the fabric of the social structure of Canada, also on political, but mostly social, and that has to be mended. And I agree with the fact that it stems down and trickles down from finances, our mismanagement of finances. In the past number of decades, we have been going down slowly. Our ethical codes have been being polluted. Our ethical codes are sort of losing control, and the management of funds is something that is going down and creating problems for the people. So finance control up at the federal level, going down into the basics, into the roots of the people, has to be done. And of course, in plain terms, providing jobs and improving businesses and increasing our investment into the people rather than outside the country, and also that we should start using our natural resources and increase industry. We do not have an industrial country. We have all the resources and all the opportunity and all the manpower and the intelligence that we can use to increase our industry. And open borders, you know, we are open to the Pacific Ocean, we are open to the Atlantic Ocean, and still we do not have the products and the commodities to export, where we have all the opportunity. So that is all there is, and Centrist Party believes in the unity of Canada as a primary principle. Thank you.
Okay, and where is the United Party of Canada on this, Grant?
Well, I'm definitely a federalist. I love this country. I think that for a long time we've been working off of the understanding of the nation as it was framed in 1867. That was Upper and Lower Canada plus the Maritimes, and then the West was opened up. And the way that happened economically was that the West became a subsidization product for Central Canada. The nation has now grown up. It's not really probably a very happy conversation in Quebec and Ontario, because It's they're the primary recipients of wealth that's being transferred from the West. This is a very clear issue, and the numbers are very obvious. We have to mature into a deeper conversation. Western Canada cannot be a colony of a colony. I set this discussion into a much bigger discussion about constitutional reform, the discussion around equalization payments, how the country works, electoral reform. These are big issues. We have so many issues in this country. I want to see a Canada where we are one people, one blood, one nation, and this reality of these different interests and reverse discrimination that we're seeing in our country. We want to move away from that. I'm very much resonate with Tisha's spirit in terms of peace and what Canada is. We want to have peace through strength. We don't want to be victims in this nation to other bully nations. The Arctic is an issue I think we need to talk about. I want to see a nation that has a strong military that can serve overseas and actually defend us if we need it. I think this issue in relation to Western Canada, and this is a deeper question I think you're asking, Rick, about regionalization. There is a desperate discontentment in Western Canada with what we've seen from this Liberal government. One of the reasons that this party has been formed is because we don't have political parties in this country that are actually addressing this issue coming out of Western Canada. We can talk about freedom all you want. The conversation has moved on even from the formation of the PPC, and I think this is where I need to speak with Maxime Bernier about this, because it's not enough now in a maturing nation like we're in just to talk about freedom and libertarianism. We have much deeper issues to engage in relation to our nation, and Western regionalism is a profoundly significant issue. I feel like when I talk to people on the street here in Ontario about this, there's kind of this vague notion of the West being kind of unhappy, but hopefully it'll just go away and they won't do anything about it. I'm starting to think that the way forward in this discussion, there's a famous saying in law, and don't take this literally, but it's like a 16th century saying. It says contracts without swords are meaningless. And what that means is, unless there's a real threat to the parties in a union that make people take notice and soberly engage a discussion, it doesn't happen. And I'm not suggesting a militancy or an uprising. I'm actually saying that one of the reasons I'm here tonight is because we need to take a higher valued position in our nation so that we don't descend into those situations, because the threat of that is actually real. And I'll tell you that because there is a militant component within our nation that, given the undermining of the nation that we've seen with the Liberal government and the inability of our key parties to actually stand up and speak to those issues, that people are having to be curtailed from actually taking issues into their own hands. Some of them are leaving the country. There's an exit of this in the country. But we've got to deal with this issue. I think this regionalization, regionalism conversation is actually a really important conversation, because within it, in the sense that there's a credible threat of Western Canada saying, you know what, we're going to pick up sticks and draw a line at the Manitoba border. Goodbye. We're sick of subsidizing Quebec and Ontario with our resources, which is the reality since 1960. And I think if we actually have that conversation, we can actually reforge this country so that it's set up for the next 150 years. So I am a federalist. I want to see Canada stay together. But unless we have these conversations and actually deal with these deeper issues now, I think the country's seriously in peril across it. When we've talked about a number of threat issues now in the nation tonight. And these all may come to a head in different ways, and I'm trying to have the discussion to get ahead of it. My family's been a conservative party voter all our lives. But I can see now in the chemistry of our nation, I think this is what the PPC is saying as well. The chemistry of our nation, we are having superficial, shallow end conversations about what the real issues are that are causing Canadians to be disgruntled. And unless we actually start to have these conversations about our sovereignty, the protection of our borders and our people, us coming together and fusing as one people, one blood, one nation, and we start to deal with these things that are causing the disunity, the press is only a propaganda component of what is actually corroding the value system of our framework and is what is creating the imbalance. I have been so interested and grateful to speak with people in the Durham constituency about this, because there actually is an awareness of these issues more broadly, and they are starting to think about it and process it, the ones that are having these conversations. And actually I'm encouraged, because I'm seeing a huge discontentment with the Liberal NDP kind of partnership, although it looks like it's going to go on now. But there's also a radical dissatisfaction with the Conservative Party, because they know that there are shallow discussions happening that aren't really addressing the issues. There's a curating, an electioneering curating, which is going on to preserve their position, because they simply believe that it's their election to lose, and they can't risk having these conversations because they have been completely acting in omission to have these conversations. And so this regionalization issue is linked into the threat to our nation. It's linked into the economic policies that are being implemented. It's linked into this Agenda 2030 discussion. And we seriously need to connect the dots to have these conversations.
Okay. And the clock is ticking here. So I'm just going to ask Gail, is there anything else that you think we need to address here before we go to the wrap-up comments from everyone?
No, I think this has been an interesting discussion to hear from everyone. And the only comment, I have to agree that, not having some of the other candidates here is maybe not the best. However, I do think that the people who showed up tonight, it says a great deal about each of you, and also that we were able to have this conversation, and even if everybody didn't agree on everything. So I think that's a good sign, because it means we're all talking about things that about the need for change, it seems. I think that's a common theme that we're hearing, is a need for change. So
okay.
Over to you.
And I just want to let everybody know that this program will be reposted across other social media platforms as well, where live streaming is not available, but it will be posted far and wide. And you guys, the candidates, are free to use this material in any way you would like as well. So if you want to cut it up and use clips from it, you can certainly do that freely. And now we will go to final comments from each of our guests. Khalid, go ahead. Where are we at tonight with the Centrist Party? Oh, make sure that you've unmuted your mic. Your microphone is muted.
Yeah. Well, thank you for inviting us here, and it's nice to have a good discussion with Tish and Grant and Gail and you, Richard. The Centrist Party believes in primarily two basic things: financial transparency and honesty, and national unity. And these are the two prime pillars of the Centrist Party of Canada. So we'll move on that, and I wish the best to all the parties in this election, and let's see how it goes on. And even beyond this election, we'll continue to interact and exchange thoughts and see how we move on in the interest of Canada. Thank you.
Excellent. And Tish, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I want to thank everyone as well. I enjoyed the conversation. I think it's not as simple. There's not simple solutions, but there really is a way. There is a road back for Canada. I firmly believe that, and it's bringing manufacturing back, putting our Canadian sovereignty first, respecting the rights of the individual, upholding the rule of law. Bringing back morality. Back to our country, and as it says in the Bible, learning to love your neighbor. So we have to start caring for our communities again. And what I lost, to take a stand was significant in my life, but it pales in comparison to what could happen if people don't take a stand for our country. And that's why people have, over the course of the last few years, grown to trust me. I've nurtured unity, open discussion, debate. Sometimes we didn't agree, just like Khalid today, and even Grant and I not on everything. And I think it's very important that you learn how to have a discussion where you disagree, and you do it civilly. What I promised in this campaign, people really like the commitment to restore parental rights. I'm pro-family. It's very important. And we have a death government. It promotes death. We have one of the highest rates of suicide now. The biggest thing we boast about is the MAID stats, medically assisted in dying. We need to promote life. We need to promote families. We need to give young couples the opportunity to have children. All of these things I will support. And I also will reduce the immigration now to solve the housing and healthcare crisis. And I think as an MP, one of the questions you asked, Gail, was, how will you interact with the municipality? But overwhelmingly, people want lower immigration. I do need to carry forward that to Parliament. I think we should have a referendum right now. The Liberal government, even in the 80s, reduced immigration when we were in similar economic chaos. But I'm also going to protect the green spaces, and will very much oppose net zero policies, because we have a rich farming communities in Durham. So I really want to go forward. I've written a number of books. I'm an emotional intelligence trainer. I've helped companies build thriving teams, learning how creative problem solving and different things. So I want to help our community be healthier, happier, and more prosperous. And all this can be done by removing federal barriers and promoting a healthy lifestyle here in Durham, holding some of our government bodies accountable for gross government overreach. I think that also needs to occur, and it hasn't. I can tell you, I used to vote Conservative because I have a small business. I cannot tolerate opposition that votes with the Liberals and NDP on almost everything that is not a true opposition. Already just yesterday, Polyev wants to send over more money and more weapons to Ukraine, which is unbelievable. Instead of helping to negotiate peace, we have far too many people perishing in these conflicts. So yeah. I will make sure in Durham that we focus on a Canada first policies and Durham first. Okay. And I think it's going to be a good outcome for PPC.
Right. And Grant, United Party of Canada, wrap up.
Yeah, thank you. Well, look, I'd like to see our country reconnected to the founding principles, which are the supremacy of God and the rule of law, and actually link our value framework back into that, because we're not having the discussions that we need to have, because we have a moral vacuum right now in this country. So there needs to be a linking up there. I will work to see the threat to our nation dismantled. As the leader of a federal party, we are looking to build MPs across this country. We're targeting 250 for the next general election. This agenda is seeking to be implemented from coast to coast. And this is something that I believe we need to be talking about. These issues that we've touched on tonight, we need to be talking about. We need to restore the strength of this nation. We need to return our sovereignty to our people. We need to ensure that freedom is secured. And, I always appreciate Tisha's comments, because she identifies clearly where she's coming from in terms of her perspective. And I never really do, because I don't like talking about myself. But I will say this, I'm a happily married man. I have 4 children. I am a Christian as well, and we are the only party that is running in this election that is pro-life and seeking to support the family, support an adoption framework for life across this country. And I see the hand going up there, Tish, but I think you have a real conversation to have within the PPC. I've had it with Max of how you're going to integrate and reconcile a pro-life or pro-family, as you call it, perspective with libertarianism, which is exactly the opposite.
Yeah, I could just say, because I'm pro-life and pro-family, I think the bigger, and I think the bigger problem here is that we have couples not even having children because they can't afford it in our country. We have kids committing suicide and drug overdoses, record levels. We have a death cult here in Canada.
I agree.
I think we have to go forward to build communities that nourish the hope of life. And I don't think, myself as a candidate, I think I take a strong stance to support all life here, whether it's a teenager who's addicted to drugs because we are pushing these sort of toxic things on our kids,
Sure.
or an elderly person who's so hopeless because they're so lonely that they're going to go in and ask for aid. So I think right across the board, we need to encourage life. And I think PPC is the only federal party that's taken a stand on some of these critical issues. And you see it, whether it was standing with the parents, with the Million March where I spoke, standing with the truckers, standing against the mandates. And when you look at the personal loss that a lot of the people across Canada who are now PPC or People's Party candidates, they have taken slander, they've taken personal loss, and they stand for all the values that we need to rebuild our country. So I think it's by far the best platform for Canada. And
Yeah,
that's
Trish,
why,
and that's great. It's my
Yeah.
conclusion. So maybe I could just finish. I just think I don't read that on your policy. I think it's a distinguishing point. And while you may hold those views, which I actually respect and honor, I'm not seeing that within your framework. I see your leader struggling to actually clarify that point nationally. And I think that that's an internal conversation that the party needs to have. I know that in some of the by-elections, as I followed along from across Canada in my book reviews, namely in Manitoba, people are struggling because there's not a forthcoming answer from the policy framework of the leader. This is not a directional comment towards you. I have no doubt that those are your views, and I like the fact that you always refer back to life and hope, because that is a huge piece that our nation needs. But the reality is the PPC is struggling with its governance model, and it's struggling to define what its framework is on this important issue, and to sugarcoat it with all those amazing things that need to happen. The fact is the party doesn't have a constitution after 5 or 6 years. People are deeply concerned about that in terms of accountability. Neither does accountability. I would beg to differ with that, actually. But anyways, and I think that in terms of an assertion for a political party that's been around for 5 years versus England that has birthed democracy in the Magna Carta, that's such a shallow comment. But anyways, the PPC has to engage these issues, and people are looking for clear policy positions. It's not within the PPC's policy. And while I value your integrity in terms of speaking to it, the boat that you're on is not clear at all on the issue. And there's a profound dissonance between libertarianism and actually articulating a pro-life policy. And thank you. Those are my comments for this debate.
Khalid, I know that you had your hand up, so you need to unmute your microphone. I did mute you again.
Yeah, I raised my hand, but now I'll pass. Thank you very much, everyone. It was a great night, great evening to have been with you and talk to you. Thank you.
All right, and with that, we will wrap up. Thank you all. Thank you, Gail, Khalid, Grant, Tish. It has been a great conversation. I think we kept things on track, and I'm very appreciative. Best of luck to all of you. Voting day is March 4th. I believe the advanced polls, have they closed now? I think today was the last day, right, for advanced
Yes, they have closed
voting?
yesterday.
Yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay, but March 4th is the big day. So best of luck to all of you in the riding of Durham. We will be watching. Have a great night. Catch everybody back here tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern, here on the Maverick News Channel. Catch you on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.